The Bitcoin Group, the American original. For over the last 10 seconds, the sharpest Satoshis, the best Bitcoins, the hardest cryptocurrency talk. We'd like to welcome our panelists. Dan Eve, the Crypto Raptor.
Red 5, standing by.
Michael Dupree from EasyBit. Gotta unmute. Ben Ark from LN Bits.
Hello, good evening.
And I'm Thomas Hunt from the World Crypto Network. Moving on to issue 1. Issue 1, SBF. Boston.com is covering the Caroline Ellison story, saying she was a math whiz and Newton native bound for success. Then she got into crypto. CZ is pushing back against SBF, saying that he's one of the greatest fraudsters in history and accuses the media and thought leaders of being manipulated. Sam Bankman-Frird has hired the same lawyer that defended Ghislaine Maxwell and Spanish drug dealer El Chapo. Brian Armstrong slams the media for treating Sam Bankman-Frird with kid gloves. Meanwhile, we've found out what's inside the Alameda portfolio. It was knockoff lotions, weight loss drugs, Chinese news sites. Sounds like a winner. And FTX founder Sam Bankman-Frird has agreed to testify at the United States House on Tuesday. So this story is still continuing. Shout out to CoffeeZilla, who also got SBF to admit to fraud, i.e. the commingling of funds. If you deposited Bitcoin onto FTX, he was supposed to keep it in a separate account than the margin trading account. During his interview with CoffeeZilla, Sam Bankman-Frird definitely admits to mixing the money. Thus, when the withdrawals came in from the entire pool because they had been mixing the money the whole time. So Alameda completely to the side. There is fraud inside of FTX where Sam Bankman-Frird allowed the customer funds to be mixed with the margin funds. And that's it. That's all the stories we've got about Sam Bankman-Frird. Dan Eve, what do you think about this week in Sam Bankman-Frird?
It's definitely unraveling to be some sort of crazy, there's definitely going to be a documentary about this, right? There's so much going on about it. It's just crazy the way that the media is treating them with, as Brian Armstrong says, with kid gloves. You know, these are people that are Bernie Madoff scale, scammed people effectively by, well, number one, mixing commingling funds, which he's admitted to, and that's pretty much that's an admission of fraud, like right there and then, if that's going to be used as evidence. But the fact is that it wasn't just the commingling of funds. There were some really insane investments from Alameda. I wonder if the other guy, to Tribeca, if he ends up getting his knuckles wrapped for this as well, because obviously he only exited Alameda in August, I think, this year as a co-CEO. So he must have been involved in very much, most of the operations. Although you could argue that since Caroline and Sam were kind of seeing each other in this soap story of fraud, then she may be more aware of the dodgy transactions than he was. But the whole thing's just crazy. I mean, even the exchange with was it Maxine Waters, and the way they're just kind of casually chatting about such a big incident it's just funny. It's just, you wouldn't have expected that sort of level of he's like a kid that accidentally ran over someone's flowers when he, his ball went over the fence, and they're like, oh, don't worry about it. It's really good that you're honest about what you've done, and that you've admitted that coming into our yard was a mistake and you accidentally hit the flowers. And the fact that he's kind of doing this crazy tour, his lawyers ended up sacking him. His previous lawyers, as you said, he's now using Ghislaine Maxwell lawyer, which is just another kind of crazy part of the story in itself. She's being represented, as in Caroline, Ellison's being represented by the firm that's representing Moderna against Pfizer. So there's some really big kind of players in this whole thing, and you'd imagine so for $10 billion of fraud. But the whole thing's such a shame that, and it's being tied to Bitcoin. It's like, people are worried about Bitcoin because of this, and it's nothing to do with it. This is a pure scammer. This isn't anything to do with Bitcoin. This is someone who's committing fraud. It's like saying, when people fall for phishing attacks, that it's the banking industry's fault. It's unfortunately it's the fraudsters' fault. Like the banking industry, like it's as much as we hate it, but if someone gets defrauded, they're not getting defrauded by the banking industry. Well, they are mostly, but in this particular case of phishing, they're getting defrauded by the fisher. But in this case, they're kind of going, oh, well, those people aren't bad. It's crypto that's the bad thing. They've been tainted by crypto. They were nice young people, and now they've been tainted. It's just insane the way it's all panning out. But yeah, I'm looking forward to the documentary and the polycules and all that stuff.
I think you're right, Dan. The media coverage has been shocking. With Bernie Madoff, they chased him down the street. They were hounding him with cameras and microphones. With this guy, you're right, he was talking to Representative Waters on Twitter as if it was no big deal. Like, oh, sure, a congressman, if you think I could be helpful, I could drop by after school. Like, I'm not too busy, congressman, but, I'm really not that helpful either. And obviously, he's not going to show up in person. Like, I think they'd nab him. I still don't understand why no one's nabbing him in the Bahamas. What's happening with this guy? And to say nothing, stories we didn't cover. His parents may never teach at Stanford again. They're both law professors. Her parents are from MIT. So it's muddying America's institutions, to say nothing of a potential sex tape. And as Dan was saying, a diagram of the polycule. Which media organization, I think the Daily Mail, will come out with a little diagram, a little chart where you'll be able to see this one was with that one, but not this one, and this one, and that one, and this one connected them all. Mike Dupree, what do you think about SBF, who also clearly admitted this week to mixing customer funds? They were one big pool.
I just always keeping things interesting in the crypto space, I guess. First, the Magic the Gathering guys went from cards to, the wonderful Mt. Gox collapse. And now we've got these polyamorous, I don't even know how to describe what they had going on there, but it sounds like kind of a sexual free-for-all. But yeah, very interesting people we have that we're trusting our money with. I don't understand how people with such a kind of shady setup were able to recruit so much investment from so many even non-Bitcoin people. It just truly surprises me that even people in the proper financial world don't do any real due diligence or anything before they're investing in and trading on these new platforms. It's really shocking to me. But I guess it's a real awakening call for those who are not real crypto people but wanted to get in on some of the action and such. It's kind of a, hey, welcome to being in control of your own money. Welcome to the reality of unregulated, basically unregulated exchanges and clearinghouses where this kind of stuff can happen. So in the scheme of things, I think it does kind of put a bit of a distratification between Bitcoin and the crypto industry as a whole, to remember the principles of Bitcoin in the early days, which was to be in control of your own money and not to be trusting third-party entities with it. So I think it's kind of really driven that important principle of Bitcoin as a cryptocurrency home to those that that weren't really careful enough. But I'm still just in a bit of disbelief at how grand of a scale they were able to build so quickly with nobody even really looking under the hood and seeing what was going on there. But yeah, just again, very, very shocking stuff.
It is incredible that they trusted this guy with so much of their money. Like Mike said, the original idea of Bitcoin and crypto as a reaction to the 2008 financial crisis was hold your own money, be your own bank. And with this guy and others, they just give them the whole farm. They hold all the money. And we do know a little bit about the character of the other exchange guys, and they're weird too, right? Brian Armstrong's essentially a Vulcan, doesn't care about anything. CZ, much the same way, doesn't care about money, has billions of dollars. And then we have this SBF guy in the Bahamas running around with everybody. And apparently he's the one with the best background, right? The other people, their background is, whatever. His background says he should be safe. Caroline, in the article, she got into that dirty crypto and it destroyed her. Ben Ark, what do you think about the SBF story? I know you're tired of it, but look at all the drama, all the ins and outs, and of course, billions of dollars missing, billions and billions.
Yeah, it's going to make there will be a good Netflix TV show to come out of it, at least at some point. It's just this crossover period where we're moving from the legacy system to the current system where people can have more control over their funds, and people are yet to learn why that's important. And episodes like this reminds them of why that's important. And they're capitalizing on that brief period in time where we're still building the same stuff we built before with these tools, which allow us to build systems which are corruption resistant, and people do have their own keys. But the way the kid's acting, and I think like with the media, for example, they're just playing nice with him because he'll talk to them and he'll give them information, he'll give them stories, but they're not on his side. They're playing nice to him now, and then they're getting as much information and many stories as they can out of the dude and out of these people. And as soon as the trial starts, then that's when the mudslinging will start, I imagine. So it's just a temporary niceties from the media sector. But yeah, the shit show continues. It sort of shows the kind of egotistical kid he is. So he thinks he can talk his way out of a bad situation, which is often the way with people who run awry, and then their ego is so big that they just think they can talk their way out of the situation, which I think is what he thinks he can do, is talk his way out of it. But yeah, it's certainly going to clear this sort of market is clearing the pool of all the bad actors and the bad companies, and it's making people more aware of why we should actually use these tools properly and have systems where we actually have control over funds and over keys, and ultimately this entire space will be better for it. For me, when we're sort of going down in this bear market, and then you have people all the way down saying, oh, there we go, every time it plateaus, they're like, oh, that's the end of the bear market, I'm buying the dip, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, like there needs to be blood in the streets. There needs to be some cataclysmic thing which happens. And this is that cataclysmic thing which happens. This is the blood in the streets. This is where everyone's depressed, and even they're questioning whether like the whole crypto industry and Bitcoin is all going to implode and there's going to be nothing left. And that's where we are properly at sort of at the bottom of the bear market, in the depths of depression. So it's a good thing. We're where we want to be, so we can climb out of this now and build better tools so people don't have this happen again. It's another example of not seeing the trees for the forest. Is that the phrase? Where if you have so many people who are entrusting somebody or an institution as being dependable and secure and safe and reliable, then you look around all the people who are trusting it and you're like, well, this thing must be legit because all these other people are trusting it, and you get this feedback cycle where everybody then trusts this thing, and underneath, under the hood, there's just a big pot of money, and they're chucking money into it. It's a Ponzi, and they're just spending that money willy-nilly, and there's no oversight, and yeah, people lose all their money. So it's happened before in history. It's going to happen again. But we do have the tools to build better things, better systems. So that's what we should look forward to, and that's what we should support as we go forward. Just watch the drama unfold, I suppose.
We interrupt this program with breaking news sent to me by Dan Eve in the chat. Exclusive. Axios says that SBF secretly funded a crypto news site. Which crypto news site? It turns out it's The Block. And The Block CEO has resigned after a failure to disclose loans from Bankman-Fried's Alameda. So he also bought his own crypto news site, which he was able to use to promote his alleged Ponzi scheme, FTX. Dan Eve, what do you think about this breaking news that you just sent me right now?
It's crazy. Well, it was BTC Moon Guy that posted it, and I quickly read up and was like, oh wow, so he's literally he's resigned in shame after, you know, they've got a disclaimer on their site that says, you know, oh, we're really, you know, impartial and blah blah blah, and it's critical that the block is fully transparent about our own financial holdings so as to avoid any appearance of bias or impropriety. The most valuable asset that we can hold and strive to earn again every day is our readers' trust. To the readers' trust now that they're funding the block. So it was like a $15 million loan. Apparently it was behind the backs of everyone else. It was just the CEO. To part finance his apartment in the Bahamas, of course, but also to help the company. So it was a dual purpose loan. So that's very, very good of Sam Bankman-Fried to you know, this is another company that's falling now because of the SBF disaster. So, you know, it's really a gift that keeps on giving. So, and yeah, thanks BTC Moon Guy for pointing that out. That's very, very interesting to put the cherry on the cake for tonight.
Yeah, it's the contagion aspect, isn't it? It's how many companies can this, you know, disaster take down? How many other companies can it take down with it? And I know of another company which is, you know, in a bad state because of the FTX stuff which is happening. So it's the contagion which people are really worried about, and we're yet to see like its total impact on the industry, I think.
But the one thing that about the whole thing of his interviews that reminds me of is, you know, I'm at the stage in life where I sit down with the missus and we watch a bunch of like murder documentaries, and the amount of them that have got, what's it they call it, the gap, not this, it's the duper's delight or something like that, where it's like they murder someone and then they're doing all these interviews like, yeah, I don't know where this person is, we're really hoping that we find the murderer, blah blah blah. And it's he just seems like that. I mean, my opinion's completely changed. You know, I was saying that, you know, he's the fall guy. I kind of feel sorry for him. You know, he did this ineffective altruism, whatever it's called, the altruism thing. And but now it just seems like he's a complete scammer, and he's like a psychopath that's standing over the dead body and still saying, oh, we need to find the murderer, we need to find the murderer.
Well, I don't have the story right here, but there was also a story this week about how the article in CoinDesk essentially sunk their parent company, DCG. DCG had been taking some of the Genesis and Gemini money, and they'd been loaning it out to FTX to get that sweet yield money, right? They wanted a percentage on their money. They weren't good enough with the money they made on Bitcoin. They wanted more. And this story that broke by CoinDesk essentially destroyed them, and they might have to sell CoinDesk. And they were talking about whether or not CoinDesk, at least the current incarnation, has editorial independence. And they were like, shit, yeah, it does. They just torpedoed their parent company. No one would have allowed this. And if you see what this block had, by having a $15 million loan from Sam Bankman-Fried, they obviously couldn't tell you anything about FTX. They were obviously biased. It's a disaster for them, and it's a lesson for everyone. Well-funded projects in the crypto industry. I wonder where they got that money. They also said that SBF tried to give $100 million to Taylor Swift to advertise for her company. Mike Dupree, what do you think about this breaking news that the block took $15 million from Sam Bankman-Fried and FTX?
Isn't that how much they paid the Shark Tank guy too, to be one of their representatives or whatever?
That's also the truth, and that's an insult to the Shark Tank guy. You think he would have gotten more than some random guy setting up a crypto blog or whatever the block was?
Yeah, I mean, it truly speaks to how good he is at vetting businesses, I guess, when he didn't do any due diligence whatsoever on a Bahamas offshore.
It's like a negotiation thing, though, too, where he's like, 15. He's like, I'll take it. He's like, maybe I should have tried 30. Maybe I should have said 45. And this little voice in his head is like, you're Mr. Wonderful. You're the greatest negotiator. I can't believe he didn't get a royalty deal where he would get $15 on every Bitcoin sold at FTX. That's his style. Come on.
Yeah, it's just absolutely crazy. I mean, I was looking at, I can't remember what website it was on, but there was a kind of a flow chart that showed all of the different people that had, all the different crypto firms that had investments in FTX. And it was just like a laundry list of well-known names. It was truly surprising that, I mean, I can understand that, you know, maybe some of these kind of old school traditional finance guys who, aren't really used to the high risk of unregulated global trading environments like Bitcoin is, and crypto in general is. I can understand a little bit how they weren't as cautious, and you have a little bit of understanding because they're kind of used to more regulated traditional markets, and they're kind of slower to adopt and to change. I mean, it doesn't excuse ignorance, but I mean, these crypto firms that jumped right on the boat right along with everybody else, even just truly shocking to me how I don't feel at all sorry for any of them. They should have known better.
Well, and DCG made tons of money on the hodl, right? They had investments in every player in this industry. They looked very above board. They said all the right things about Bitcoin, but really when it came down to it, Sam and FTX offered them a way to make interest, to make more money on their Bitcoin or their Ethereum or whatever it was. And they sent it over, and they got caught trying to make them more money. It's just like everyone else who was like, buy a car, take out a loan, get more money. But it turned out they bought a huge car. They bought like a fleet of cars from this guy.
Yeah, I can't believe that people didn't see the obvious signs of something shady going on when you just looked at the returns and the the yields and stuff like that they were kind of promising. It doesn't take a financial guru or rocket scientist to notice a trend there and to kind of throw up a red flag and be extra cautious. So it's just truly shocking to me. But I guess in the end of the day, maybe it's time that it weeds out some of the people that aren't making good financial decisions insofar as where they're placing not only their own assets, but in a lot of cases other people's money as well, which is the really scary part of it. So I think it does reinforce, though, again, the founding principles of decentralized stateless currency, which is that the real magic here, the real proof is in the pudding of storing your own assets, being responsible for your own money, and not trusting these third parties.
Well, it's like that old saying where the sheep get fleeced, the pigs get slaughtered, and the wolves get fed. Something like that. Ben Ark, what do you think about FTX secretly backing the block with millions of dollars, $15 million?
I guess they're just throwing cash around, and it was that they're in that position. And there's a lot of Bitcoin companies and which have got into this position where they rely on the money going, they rely on the number going up. So they're kicking the can down the road. They make some bad investments. They start giving money away. They think it's going to bolster the industry and then help their own portfolio, and they'll be able to dig. And it's the same thing which happened with the Mt. Gox stuff. They think they can dig their way out of it, and they just can't. The hole gets bigger the more they try and dig their way out. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say that these people started off with ill intent and they wanted to defraud everybody. They were just gross misconduct. They were given too much power, too much money, and they didn't have enough expertise. There was no oversight, and there was too much trust in them being these savant genius kids. Whereas in reality, they're just egotists making bad decisions, and ultimately it's the people who suffer for that are going to be the investors and the people who then use their platform. So it's sad. It's a shame.
But imagine if he had gotten Taylor Swift. It all would have been fine if only Taylor Swift would have come on board. She would have turned this whole thing around. Really quickly, exit question. Do you think that he'll appear on Tuesday, as he said? Do you think he'll appear on Zoom? Do you think they'll treat him nicely? Dan Eve.
Oh yeah, the way they're going, they're just going to be. I mean, I don't know about all of them, but certainly some people are going to go quite easy on him. If the Twitter's anything to go by, whether he turns out in person or not, I think it might be better for him to stay in the Bahamas, right, and wait to be potentially extradited by the long hand of the law. So maybe he might do it by Zoom, but I think it's definitely going to be I think it'll be a mixed bag. I think some people are going to go hard on him because he's going to be questioned by multiple people, right? It's not just one person. It's isn't it like anyone could? Well, loads of people can throw questions at him, right? Is that how it works?
I think a series of congressmen will get maybe like 3 to 5 minutes each. So there'll be different style to each one. We'll be able to say, oh, that guy went easy. That guy doesn't understand anything. That lady was nice to him, so forth and back and forth.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think he'll show up in person. I don't know if he could get out of the airport. I mean, if you really think about how much money this people has lost people, you wonder how he can just be in the Bahamas yakking it up on Zoom, having a good time. It doesn't make any sense. Mike Dupree, what do you think? Will he show up to Congress? Will they treat him nicely?
I have no idea, but I mean, I agree with Ben. I don't see, I mean, I know that there was a news article about him opening up withdrawals, you know, a little bit early for people in the Bahamas to try to make things right there. And, you know, its reply to that when people questioned it was just that, you know, that they live there and that they need to make sure that they're safe and such. And that's probably the reality of the situation. He's wherever he is right now, he's probably very much keeping an eye over his shoulder because you're talking about a lot of fortunes that were lost here. And probably the safest place for him right now is just to remain in the Bahamas. And as you say, I don't know, not only just with people in general trying to get at him for, you know, for losing their money and for playing games with people's futures. I think also that he would risk potentially, you know, not being able to then leave the United States. I'm pretty sure that I don't know what regulatory body would even be investigating this, but I'm sure there's multiple. And I'm sure that he's going to be seeing the inside of a courtroom at some point, even if he is ultimately extradited and does remain kind of hiding away over in Bahamas or wherever else he deems is the safest place to be for him. But if I were him, I would be very weary of, you know, walking into the United States right now, especially with as many people, both from the legal side of things, as well as just angry customers. So I think it's highly unlikely that he would show up. But yeah, I mean, I'm still a little bit surprised that in Bahamas that the government, you know, as we were saying earlier, you know, well, with Madoff and some of these other guys, why nobody's even brought him in for questioning or anything. It seems that he must have broken some regulations, even with the more lenient regulations in the Bahamas. I'm sure that it's still not legal to, you know, to fraud people of their money and to mix leveraged and non-leveraged traders' money and stuff like that. So I highly doubt that we'll see him.
The Bahamas, they want to have a reputation as a place for crypto businesses. So this is a huge failing for them by not, you know, charging him with something, not bringing him in, even if he did pay them off. Or maybe all that matters is that he paid them off.
Yeah, well, I think that's probably the reality. If he's throwing cash around, I imagine he's greased a lot of people in the Bahamas. So, yeah, I think that's probably why there's a little bit of protection there. But his ego will get the better of him at some point, and he'll go somewhere he shouldn't go and get arrested. He'll definitely turn up on Zoom at least and try and talk his way out of it. And,
he certainly seems pretty happy to take meetings and talk to everybody, which I find to be very surprising because, you know, usually when something like this happens, I'm sure he's got some lawyer somewhere that would be advising him that the best thing to do right now is to remain silent because there's not really not much you can usually in these kind of situations. There's not much that you can usually explain your way out of. It's usually by even answering questions, you know, without a very well structured, well thought and through even written responses, kind of putting yourself at risk of saying something you shouldn't, or you know, kind of putting your foot in your mouth, kind of like what he did with CoffeeZilla the other day. So I'm actually surprised how vocal he is about the whole thing, and just the whole complacency of him just kind of chilling and, you know, smiling and having Zoom calls and just saying, oh, well, you know, we made a mistake or whatever. It's you know, it seems kind of unreal to me how lightly the regulatory bodies as well as just the company as a whole is taking this. I mean, and when you look at the new CEO, I don't remember his name, but came out and said that he couldn't believe the entire mess that he'd seen here, and he had worked on previously, I believe, like the Enron stuff and other companies that have been in similar positions. I just am really surprised that there's not more of a legal spokesperson that's making, you know, official kind of statements as opposed to these group Zoom calls where it's just random people asking him questions kind of off the top of the cusp without any real planned out answers. So I'm very surprised that that he's as vocal as he is, but I really don't think that we'll see him in person in Congress. I don't know why he would, what the advantage to that would be, because there is no real, at this point, there's not much explaining that you're going to be able to do to justify the blatant, just the blatant way that they mixed funds, the even going against their own agreements and their own terms of service and that kind of stuff. So I'm just shocked at how vocal he's being and that he's even accessible at all. I mean, when you look at, for example, when Mt. Gox went down, Karpeles was basically silent for, I don't know if it was months, but I mean, we didn't hear much out of him almost for a couple of years before he started posting again. And even now, he very rarely discusses the civil rehabilitation and the bankruptcy proceedings and that kind of stuff with Mt. Gox. So, yeah, and I'm also just still, I mean, they're still figuring it out, but just curious kind of where the money went. I mean, we talk about these, 15 million here and there and that kind of stuff, but there's a lot more than that missing. And I just don't know where all that money went. Is very confusing to me as well, because obviously it's a zero-sum game. So, for every dollar lost, somebody made $1. Where did all those dollars end up?
Well, I think he's
right now. Go ahead, Dan.
So I was just going to say that he keeps on repeating this thing about, I've only got 100K in my bank account. And that's another thing, like, again, you watch these murder mysteries where the psychopath's talking, he repeats a phrase, and it's because he's clearly lying about that phrase. Like, this guy apparently created backdoors for people to shuffle their money out in all sorts of different ways. So there's no way that he came out of it with just 100K in his bank account. He could have had fake companies. You saw I don't know if you see the company structure is insane as it is, like hundreds of companies underneath, FTX and that sort of group. So that he could have funneled it into all sorts. So the idea that he's this, I'm this poor guy who can't afford legal representation, I think that's definitely not true. He's definitely hiding a lot of cash under the bed somewhere.
I think one of the ideas for where the money went is these large leverage bets, where the bet is just out of control and the leverage is thousands X and it goes the wrong way for too long. Caroline said she didn't use math and she didn't use stop losses. So it's possible that they simply just accidentally whoopsie gambled the money away. It also sounds like they had bad investments into random things. It sounded like the movie Brewster's Millions, where they're intentionally trying to lose the money. So I don't know what's going on there, but I agree with what Mike was saying. The advantage to Sam showing up in person is I want to see it on TV. That's the advantage. There's no advantage for Sam. It would be horrible. I agree with Mike. He wouldn't be able to get out of the country. Presumably the U.S. Justice Department, which seems so slow, would actually act if he was there in the country. And he does keep talking. He did fire his lawyers, or as Dan said, his lawyers fired him for all of this nonsense talking. He has been hurting his case. I see two ways that could go. One, he's incredibly naive / a con artist, and this is the only way he can really react, is with more of the BS that got him here. He figured this worked last time, I just lather it up to more people, it works this time. Or he has an exit strategy, and I think he'd take care of himself. I don't know about that, but that's what I would worry, because the kind of fantasy land, I can help this industry. Like he did that interview with Stephanopoulos. He said at the end, he's like, Sam kept talking about making the victims whole and his part in that. So he wants to be a hero and to come back and to give these people money. But if you look at what Stephanopoulos did, he took his 2 hours with Sam, put it down to 15 minutes, and then after the bit laughed at Sam's idea that he could make victims whole. And then the three people on the panel, the other anchors, also agreed that it seemed delusional and insane. Like there's no way we can put Humpty Dumpty back together from this. And Sam seems to think that he can, or he's going to kill himself. I don't know, Ben. What do you think?
He's just not acting rationally. It's the ego thing. He thinks he can talk his way out of it. He spent a long time giving lots of people money, and then all these people around him are smiling him and thanking him for all the money he's giving. And he's such a and then that just played into his ego. And I think you're giving him too much credit for being calculating. I think he's just an idiot, and he just lost the money on bad bets, and gave out a lot of money thinking, just to make friends, basically. And I don't think it's as calculating as you think he is, and I don't think this is an exit strategy or anything. He'll end up in jail. People won't get their money back either.
I do think that the CoffeeZilla explanation should be anyone's new explanation of explaining why this is fraud. If you deposited a Bitcoin with Sam, he's supposed to hold that Bitcoin in a separate account. According to that interview, what Sam allegedly says that they did was to mix that Bitcoin with other Bitcoin, which was for margin trading and lending, i.e., all of the customer deposits were being taken from one thing and put into another thing. And when it was time to withdraw them, as Sam again said on CoffeeZilla, he withdrew them all from the same pool. So anybody who got their transactions in first got their money. Whereas if you had your money in the customer deposit section, it's supposed to stay there. If your money's in the margin lending system, it's supposed to be lended out. He says he violated this. That has nothing to do with Alameda or any additional things. But let's move on. Although this issue persists over everything, and now we get to watch him in Congress on Tuesday. Issue 2, Jack Dorsey's Block backs Bitcoin mining company that wants to bring 25-cent electricity to rural Africa. Jack Dorsey's digital payment company Block and Elise Killian's Bitcoin-focused venture firm Stillmark have led a $2 million seed investment into Gridless. Gridless designs, builds, and operates Bitcoin mining sites alongside small-scale renewable energy producers in rural Africa where excess energy is not utilized. That's right, they're mining Bitcoin with excess energy, but now they're trying to do it in Africa. Mike Dupree, what do you think of Jack Dorsey's plan?
I'm surprised they even have that big of an infrastructure in Africa so far as power is concerned, but always interesting to see what Jack's up to. It seems that he always has some interesting can of worms that he's cracking somewhere in El Salvador and Africa or wherever else. But I guess that's a good plan. But I don't understand where this extra energy in Africa is becoming such a burden that they're able to be mining there. Also, I don't think that the shipping infrastructure or the data center infrastructure and of course, mining in high temperature areas. I'm just very surprised. That doesn't sound like Africa would be a very good place for Bitcoin mining in general, but I guess I wish them the best of luck with it.
It sounds more like a help the children project than a business, doesn't it, Mike? It seems like all these things add together. And then when you talk about the actual constraints of it, the air conditioning, electrical power, consistency, shipping the miners to them, access to the internet, the actual way of doing this sounds very difficult in practice.
Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of logical sense. I think there would be a lot more places in the world, if you're going to look at a global capacity, that are just better set up for it, where they already have infrastructure in place and they have things such as geothermal mining up in Iceland, that they're doing some Bitcoin mining out there because the power generation is really abundant, and it's it's also very green because you're using geothermal electricity, which is pretty good on the environment. I'm kind of skeptical whenever somebody talks about using like solar and these kind of renewable energies for Bitcoin mining, because in general they're just not very dense types of power generation. So I mean, how many solar panels do you need to run a Bitcoin miner? It's got to be you're talking a lot of them, because mining is very, very, very energy heavy. So I just think that it kind of sounds like a kind of a blowing smoke kind of idea, more than it is any real meat to it. But I guess we'll see. But I think there's probably far better things to do in Africa than try to mine Bitcoin. But I wish
it has been Bitcoin Africa week on Twitter. Every tweet I've seen has been Bitcoin Africa. Everybody's meeting Jack in Africa, which
there's
sounds
a conference
great.
going on over there right now, right? Or coming up
I think
soon.
so. It's timed with the conference. So it's good news, but I agree with Mike. It doesn't seem like the right project for really mining. A little more interesting is the Texas program, where they're using the excess gas when they have too much gas and they can't manage it. They can use that excess flare gas to mine Bitcoin. But then again, they think that the Bitcoin miners will turn them off during high power points. And I'm not sure about that plan. Ben Ark, what do you think of this plan to mine Bitcoin in Africa?
I think it's very good. I spoke to Obi about it. I'm also very skeptical about using renewables with Bitcoin mining, mostly because of the, you can't use the word intermittency. It's what's the word which the renewable crowd use is predictable. So the sun comes out and then you can use the solar panels to capture some energy. But no, the scheme which Gridless is doing is in Africa. You have a small hydro plant, and that small hydro plant generates electricity for a town. And they have lots of these little hydro plants because they've got lots of rivers and where they can attach one of these hydro plants. So what Gridless are doing is they're going into these hydro plants and saying, look, we will bolster your hydro plant, we'll make it more productive, we'll build in for some infrastructure. However, we're also going to stick this container full of miners next to it, and we're going to take the excess energy which is generated. So we're going to create enough energy for your town, but then we're going to, because we're now running double capacity, we could run 2 towns, we're going to use like extra capacity for mining Bitcoin. Because it's hydro, it's fairly constant. So your base load is fairly constant. With solar, you do have this intermittent stuff, whereas with hydro, particularly where these hydro plants are based, it's fairly steady. So it brings the cost of the electricity way down, and they benefit from mining Bitcoin using the hydro plant. And then after a certain amount of years, then the communities can then use that energy to power more townships. But I think there's a couple of examples where they've taken one of these hydro plants, which is powering a small town, and it's now powering 3 small towns, and that's been made a profitable and sustainable exercise by attaching these extra containers of Bitcoin miners. I was very skeptical, but then when I spoke to Obi, he'd been out there, and he's a good guy. The guy's spearheading the Fedimint project. He changed my mind. I spoke to him in Bitcoin Amsterdam, and he spoke at me for like half an hour, and he was just so passionate, and he was saying, look, this actually works, and it's working as a way of you can. The Gridless are very honest as well. They're saying, look, we're not a Bitcoin mining operation. We're just using this tool so we can build these hydro plants and make them more sustainable, and as a way for us to make the infrastructure and the hydro plant more efficient and better and scale it up. So I think it's quite an exciting use of renewables because people benefit, they get electricity. And I think that is one of the more sustainable ideas for using renewables with Bitcoin mining. And actually, use of renewables with Bitcoin mining is on the rise. There was Cambridge did a report on it, and I think it's quite a large percentage. It was, I think, 30% or something of Bitcoin mining is done with renewables. And then there was another report which came up fairly recently by another guy who went and I think he said it was probably closer to more like 40%, 45% using renewables. So for grid stabilization, the flaring stuff in the US of burning the gas flares and using that power source to then run some miners. If you've got like a free electricity, then you don't have to have those, because one of the biggest problems with mining Bitcoin on renewables, mining Bitcoin, is you need to have your miners on all the time in order for them to make any money. And then if you turn them off when the sun's not shining or whatever, then your miners aren't going to make any money. But if your base load of electricity is basically free, then your miners don't need to be on anywhere near as much. So Troy Cross, Margot, they're doing some great work on this. There's some as an example of using renewables with Bitcoin mining, I think this is very promising actually. And this is probably why Block have invested a couple of $1 million into it. So it's good to see.
If only solar panels worked at night.
But this is a solar, it's hydro. So
there, no puzzler. But no, also Obi's a friend of the show. We met him in London, and Elise Killian as well. Also met at several of the conferences. Dan, Eve, what do you think if only solar panels worked at night? Ben's turned me around. It sounds like a good plan now. I agree with Mike, though. The logistics are tough.
Well, I think it's still ultimately really, really positive. Like in the article, it's saying, and there's always this meme that floats around, like saying, if you had, if you put this like this patch of, I don't know how big it was, it's not very big, but in the in the middle of the desert in Africa, it would provide enough electricity for the world. And the reason why that's more reliable in the Sahara is that there's a lot less cloud than there would be. So it's kind of, as Ben was saying, it's less reliable, predictable, and in a lot of in that place there, there's not lots of clouds and not lots of rain, so to kind of take away the sunshine from the solar panels. And I think the article says that there's like 10 terawatts of solar capacity in Africa, 350 gigawatts of hydro and 110 gigawatts of wind. So that it really does seem like it's time to start taking advantage of the sun shining so hardcore, and actually, using that to provide energy. They're saying in this article they're not using Bitcoin for mining Bitcoin for Bitcoin. They're mining it as I think the quote is like a means to an end, right? It's like they want Bitcoin to bring cheap power to the masses rather than just mining it to help secure. Mining it to help secure the network. So that's ultimately very positive, especially if it does really bolster the electricity infrastructure. And they say that in the article that something like 30% of school kids still do their homework in using under candlelight, pretty much. So it really does mean there is a need for electricity in that part of the world. And if you can subsidize it by using Bitcoin, then that's an incredible thing. The only downside is that I just think to myself, like, if it comes to turning miners off and not making money, the people running them are like, well, we could have a blackout because we are making lots of money mining Bitcoin, right? I mean, everyone's dealt with blackouts for so long. It wouldn't really matter that we just didn't, give any electricity out tonight because we could just mine a bit more Bitcoin. I think that could lead to a conflict. So unless there's, there's a lot of kind of, dare I say it, regulation on how that electricity is distributed to make sure that it does go to the right causes, then I think that using Bitcoin as a means to really boost and bootstrap the rollout of wide-scale electricity and renewable electricity at that to Africa is an incredible thing. And I think, I really hope to see it being successful.
I think as well that these hydro plants are owned by kind of the local community under a kind of cooperative thing. So that it's less likely, I think it's like a relationship they have with it's like a business relationship where, this amount of electricity will be used for the mining. So I think it would be hard for the incentives, because I see what you're saying, like just turn off the town and then mine more Bitcoin.
What if the power lines fell down, but the power lines that connected the Bitcoin miners still worked?
Well, this is the point. Africa's not one big connected grid. It's lots of little grids where they have a little hydro plant and it just powers the town. So, the wires going to the town will continue to operate. So it's the townsfolk, I'm sure, will go and I don't think the people running the mining operation will want to anger the townfolk and take their electricity away.
Sounds like pretty soon you're going to need a military, and then you're going to need a government, and then this whole thing's going to happen.
You naysayer.
But I love the idea. Unfortunately, as I was going to say a minute ago, we still come back to this boring idea from West Wing that Africa needs roads. Africa needs basic infrastructure that would make it faster to ship the miner from point A to point B. I don't know of massive road infrastructure, freeway projects. I don't know if they're going to do it. Maybe they'll skip to flying cars like India skipped to cell phones, but infrastructure, roads.
What's the real advantage also from a business perspective for the miners to do it in Africa? I mean, sure, this whole like philanthropical, like we're going to do it to help everybody out kind of stuff sounds great. So, I mean, I'm sure through that, they're also, having less problems with import taxes, less problems with, tax and general regulations and that kind of stuff. But what would be the reason to try and generate Bitcoin in that kind of environment versus elsewhere? What's the motivating factor?
Well, I'm
Why
gonna
not
let
just
Ben
do it
talk.
where
I'm
it's
gonna
most
let Ben talk,
profitable?
but to me, it sounds like they're doing some kind of thing where they can get a bigger reactor and they could power more towns if they had this extra slice of Bitcoin mining money. It sounds like a bioreactor program or
I think they have the hydro plant. They haven't got enough money to make it bigger, and then and maintain it. And then they have issues with the hydro plant being sustainable. So that by also mining Bitcoin, they're then able to build a more resilient and get more power generation from the hydro in which they're pulling the electricity from. So they're incentivized to work with this company or this operation to put these miners in place. Yeah.
It's a funny thing. It's like there's this magic customer that you could always hire up who always wants more energy. And all these different places are figuring out ways that they can work with that customer. But then there's that other problem where that guy always wants more energy. Like he never stops. So we'll have to see how this turns out. It's a fun thought experiment. But we're running out of time. Check out worldcryptonetwork.com. We've got 3,022 videos. Also a great time to give the show a thumbs up. I'd say there are about 40 or 50 people who push the thumbs up button, and there's maybe 500 people that watch this show. So join the 40 or 50, push the thumbs up button. It's free. And issue 3, just 8% of Americans now have a positive view of cryptocurrencies, according to a CNBC survey. It's down from 19% in March, which jumped to 43%, up from 23%. Ben Ark, everyone hates Bitcoin and Bitcoiners. They hate crypto and cryptocurrency. They don't understand it. Other people made money off it. We don't have a lot of time, but really quick, what do you think about we're down to 8%?
I think 8% is an amazing number considering where we are price-wise. I think this is 8% of the population who are like hodler motherfuckers and they see the technology for what it is. Which is great. Like the ditch there, that extra couple of tens of percent who don't see the Bitcoin technology for what it is and for its ability to create a much better world moving forward. So it's a good number. 8% is a great number for where we are currently in our market. All the other folk will come on board, I'm sure, as the price goes back up eventually. But for where we are, 8% is great. Good number.
Dan, Eve, Ben has incredible optimism. The 8% are crypto strong. I miss the 25%. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think bearing in mind it's a bear market where we're back down to floating above a level that was lower than the 2017 peak. It's not too bad, right? The one thing is about this survey is that they said it's a survey of, drum roll please, 800 Americans nationwide. Now, America's got like a population of 300 and something million, right? So obviously it's an extremely small population, and it's also of NBC News specifically. So it does depend on if NBC News doesn't run that many positive articles on crypto, then it's likely to be skewed. So that kind of plays into it. But I say crypto, yeah, okay. BTC Moon guy, good point. Crypto, bad to say crypto, but Bitcoin, right? But Bitcoin is being dragged into the whole crypto mess that's happened with FTX. But yeah, I think it's a good position, I think, to be in right now, considering we are in a bear market. I'm with Ben. I think this is positive. And as we come out of it, things probably will get a bit worse. Probably more ripples from the SBF FTX disaster, and more companies going down, more angry people taken to the streets. But the fact is that Bitcoin's still rocketing strong. It's like it's still got like the highest hash rate or the most secure network on Earth. I don't know what the hash rate is doing right now. It is at 278 exahashes, which is pretty much within about 5% of all-time high, within a couple of percent of all-time high. So right now, although the price is where it is, the network is almost the strongest as it's ever been, bar 2 specific individual days where it peaked over the current hash rate. So yeah, great position to be in. I'm optimistic like Ben.
Don't get me sad about the 8% strong here, Dan. Dan's doubting the poll. But for right now, the poll is the truth. Mike Dupree, what do you think about our 8% remaining, or looking at it the other way, 8% strong?
I have no idea what percentage of people take polls on CNBC these days, but I don't know how reliable how many eggs I'm gonna put in the basket of the accuracy of a CNBC poll. But I think that number sounds pretty weak, and I think additionally that things like this FTX crash. Well, a couple of things going on here. I think that you get a lot of people that are irritated that they didn't get in on the gold rush kind of feeling. And then you've got a lot of people that were just, jumping on board because everybody else was on the train and they wanted some too. So you've got people who missed out on making the money, and you got people who lost money because they didn't really know what they were doing. And you've got a lot of negative publicity and press, especially around the kind of people that we have with this SBF guy, when they're weird sexcapades and just the unregulated nature of everything. So, I mean, it's not surprising to me that your average Joe who doesn't really know much about crypto wouldn't be too much entertained with the recent debacle of craziness going down. So, I mean, that's not that surprising to me, but I think that poll's a little bit inaccurate. I think that there's more and more people using crypto now than there ever have been. I mean, we know that for a fact. And I think that the market is maturing nicely, and that there are, we only look at these things that blow up, but in a bad way, but there's lots of also very positive projects right now in the crypto space. And I think that when we do take these, when the price does pull back quite a bit like this, it's actually very good for for crypto as a whole, because it kind of weeds out a lot of the people that got lucky and a lot of the people that don't really know what they're doing and are just kind of playing games and trading and this kind of stuff, versus people that are actually building value and creating things that will benefit the crypto industry and the future of crypto as a whole, or Bitcoin as a whole, either way that you want to look at it. So I guess in a sentence, I'd say that I'm not too worried about CNBC's polls, and 8% sounds low, but I'm not nervous, and I think we've got a lot of great potential still, and a lot of interesting things to come in the near future.
8% strong. And I'm not getting into the whole Bitcoin versus crypto thing now, but I do think crypto has been used as a generic for Bitcoin and the industry. And I think they're going to keep using it. So the battle to separate Bitcoin from crypto will fail, because Bitcoin's a cryptocurrency that uses cryptography. It's hard to define Bitcoin without the word crypto. But let's move on to
can of worms. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a whole nother thing. I want them to fight in the chat. Moving on to issue 4. Metallica warns its fans about a crypto scam. There you go. Nothing to do with us. After a fan lost more than 25,000 in Bitcoin, on a fake Metallica-themed YouTube channel. Obviously, we've talked about these scams before. We've talked about Elon Musk scams. We've talked about SpaceX scams, Microsoft, other people, Steve Jobs coming back from the dead, willing to double your Bitcoin if all you will do is send your Bitcoin to them. As we know, Bitcoin is one-way money. So the Metallica fan who sent them 25,000 in Bitcoin is never going to see it again. What I think is interesting about this story is the expansion from nerds and nerd culture scams to general culture scams. Metallica has a new album coming out. That's why they chose Metallica. Mike Dupree, what do you think about Metallica and the scams expanding into new areas?
Metallica and decentralization. Weren't they one of the first people back in the Napster days to actually go after people for sharing their music?
Absolutely. And it led to one of the best internet animations. It was a flash animation. Metallica bad, Napster good. Napster bad, Metallica good. That was it.
Yeah, exactly. I find it hard to really have sympathy for people who are so dumb with their money. Especially with the FTX stuff, especially these smarter firms and stuff that were crypto, centered firms that still got fleeced. I think it's just important that people wake up and start paying attention to their financial, future, and not be so reliant upon the banks, the governments, and the regulators to, be there and hold their hand the whole time, because there's a very intrinsic cost built into trusting and relying upon these traditional financial systems to protect your wealth. And so, I feel bad for the people. Yeah, that sucks, man. Don't be so stupid next time, I guess, would be my best advice. I think that people need to grow up and stop just hopping on trains and throwing their money where everybody else does, and just kind of, gambling, and actually to take charge of their money and to be responsible for it. So I think it's kind of a blessing in disguise that money is getting kind of removed from those that are not being smart with it. Especially, it kind of hurts a lot more when it's fans that are getting fleeced and are trying to support music. I really do believe that, we got to support artists and such. But, with the FTX stuff, for example, these large firms losing their money, man, I don't feel sorry for them at all. I think that they got what they deserved, and it's about time that, some people that are riding fine lines and playing these games got burnt. So that extends down to fans as well, and the people that just aren't paying attention to what they're doing. And you see this a lot. I mean, we had back in the ATM space as well, where people are getting scammed, and you go to people and you tell them, when they're trying to use the machine, you're like, hey, you're definitely getting robbed here. You're going to get scammed. And they still want to insist that they know what they're doing, and insist that, everybody thinks that they know something that everybody else doesn't. And this is one of the things that when somebody that doesn't know much about crypto asks me, should they invest in Bitcoin? Should they invest in this? Should they invest in that? And it's one of the first points that I always make to them is not to forget that it's all a zero-sum game. And when you're trading or you're gambling or you're, even just using crypto to pay people, you have to remember that for every dollar somebody makes, somebody else loses $1. And before you start playing games, make sure that you're confident that you're knowing enough and that you're smart enough to ensure that you're not going to be the sucker on the other end of that trade. So I hope that people learned a good lesson. I think it's a valuable lesson to learn, and it's something that's going to come along with crypto for the future, which is that, hey, you're responsible for your own assets now. So don't be trusting these shady exchanges that are, just brand new and going crazy in the Bahamas, and don't be trusting Magic the Gathering card exchanges with your retirement funds and this kind of stuff. So part of me says, hey, that kind of sucks. I wish that Metallica had gotten the money, although I have my own issues with the way Metallica went after people in those Napster days. But at the same time, I think it's important that we talk about it and that people hear that it happened, and that hopefully all those people that invested, or not invested, but that donated money or would have bought an album or whatever it is they did with that 25 million, I hope they all tell their friends and family, hey, be careful when you use Bitcoin. Be in charge of your own money. It's a great thing in the capacity that we're a non-inflationary currency, and that we're not debt-based, and that in the future Bitcoin is going to, or historically has always gone up and become more valuable as opposed to any fiat currency in the world, where it's always become inflated and become worth less and less as time goes by. But that, hey, we got a powerful tool here, a powerful currency, but hey, you got to really be careful. So, I just recommend it. One of the unfortunate things is that when people do get scammed and people do lose money, usually they're not going to be the ones that are most vocal about telling their friends and family about, hey, fuck, I tried to do this with Bitcoin and I lost all my money. Usually you only hear about it when people make money, and then, everybody else tries to get in on the same train. So hopefully people share their experience with using Bitcoin and with these kind of things with their friends and family, and that in general, the greater population of the world can become smarter with managing their own money and being responsible for their own money. So maybe the positive that we can see out of this is that maybe some people will educate their friends and family, and people will learn a lesson and become more in control and capable of paying attention to what they're doing, and less reliant upon third parties to have their best interest in mind, which, as we all know, normally they don't.
I think you're right, Mike. It is amazing to think about the reality of this. This guy had $25,000 in Bitcoin ready to go. It wasn't in a hardware wallet. It wasn't locked in Coinbase Vault or any kind of controlled system. It was ready to go. So I don't know what he was going to do with it, probably trading in and out of Bitcoin. But in this case, when Metallica offered him, I assume 2x, maybe 3x return on his Bitcoin, he didn't just send some of it, he sent all of it. Because if you're going to double your money, why not double all of your money? Why not send it all? So it's just a classic thing that happens to people, the excitement, the potential of getting double or triple or even 8 times his money, no matter what the lie was that got him to send. The impulses were generated, Metallica was going to pay him. It made sense in his mind for 30 seconds, and whoop, it's all gone.
Maybe a little bit of logic sometimes goes a long way. And just, I hear all the time these people that are getting involved in these trading groups and they're following Telegram chats where everybody's telling everybody what to trade and this kind of stuff. And I just don't understand how people really can be so dumb with their money. I've made stupid investments many times in my life, but I look at some of these things and it's just like, are you kidding me? I mean, maybe that person didn't deserve to have that Bitcoin. I don't know. It's not like it was really stolen from him, and it's not like it was somebody else that was doing the trading on his behalf and that he was lied to through an agreement like with FTX or with Mt. Gox and this kind of thing. But it was literally, it wasn't a hack. It was literally just somebody who made a conscious financial decision with the information that seemed completely unrealistic from the beginning. And they, I don't know. It's hard to feel sorry for him.
If it's too good to be true, it probably is. Ben Ark, what do you think about the guy who gave his money away to Metallica?
Do we know exactly why he gave his money away to Metallica? Was there a promise of making more money? Or was it give him 25 grand and then you get to hang out with Metallica for a year?
No, I think it was pretty straightforward. Generally, these scams promise to double or triple your money. All you have to do is send it to them and they will send it back to you. Sometimes they go as far as, if you send them like $5, they'll send you $10 back to, juice the line. But after you put in, a couple thousand, they just keep the money.
Hopefully they had the money to burn and it's just some rich idiot. Hopefully, and but I agree with Dupree here. I think there's just a lot of margin for people just to learn and get better at not getting scammed. And I think people are more and more as time wears on. Like, the good data is rising to the top, and people are becoming more resilient to being scammed through something like Bitcoin. And there's only so many times where you can run the same scam before it becomes sort of a common knowledge thing, like the Nigerian prince or whatever else. So now you have like the Metallica scam, and then there's press about it, and then people learn. And I wrestle with regulation because I don't want vulnerable people, because usually it's vulnerable people who get ripped off in any scam, and I don't want the vulnerable people to be ripped off. But I do think that those people are made vulnerable partly by regulations. So having some consequences and having some more autonomy is a good thing, and those lessons need to be learned, and it's just a case of education and making sure that people know and are best armed to not get scammed. But yeah, I mean I don't know the complete ins and outs of why exactly they sent $25,000 to this Metallica scam, whether it was just we will double your money. I kind of envisioned it being more of like a super fan scam. So send us some money and you get to hang out with us or something. And then I imagine some like kid getting on his dad's computer and spending his dad's Bitcoin on trying to, hook up with Metallica or something. But whatever. So yeah, people will, as humans are very good at learning stuff, and humans will get better at where regulation doesn't work as well as it used to. Then people will get much better at being able to spot scams for what they are.
Well, unfortunately, the regulation would have to come to YouTube, because that's the company that's hosting the scams is YouTube. And it's that power of the QR code. They put the QR code on the screen. The money can jump right through the screen. And Dan, you've seen these happen before. Is it, like I'm saying, it's just a double your money, triple your money? It's an excitement feeling, yeah?
Yeah, it was called, so it was, sorry, it was called Metallica2x.net. And so it was literally as dumb as like, you can 2x, like, we're doing a worldwide crypto offering. We're going to give you, to celebrate our 25-year anniversary, whatever it was, we'll give you twice the crypto you send us. And people were like, oh my God, that's amazing. And they literally just sent their Bitcoin to them, which is just insane, if you ask me. Now, it said, according to this article, that that only one person in the US is actually, like, I'd feel like a complete twat if that was me, but like only one person's come forward to the police to actually raise it as a crime. according to this article. So that's so I'd be thinking, oh, like you know, I really fell for that one, hook, line, and sinker. But I do think there is a bit of a problem with the world generally. We seem to be making things more about trust rather than people critically thinking for themselves, and that has a problem with scams. And even with the original, like the Prince email scams, they've evolved and people still fall for them. Like the latest one I read about, that a lady in Japan sent 4.4 million yen. The police investigated it. They sent, which is about $30,000, to to a Nigerian who claimed he was lost in space and needed a ticket home on a Sawyer's rocket. You're like, oh my God. And there's even Snopes covered this one. They're like, the Snopes article literally is a Nigerian astronaut lost in space? A Nigerian astronaut lost in space needs $3 million to get back home. Fact checked by Snopes. Scam. So, you know, surely you can fact check that in your brain. Like I'm with Mike here. There's personal responsibility. And I know it's really difficult. You get caught up in the moment. You know, it's their favorite band and they're thinking, well, Metallica did like charity stuff, so maybe they're just going to give people money, but no one gives money away. Like if they do, it's you know, it's not in that way. It's just not like someone going, I'll double your money from over the other side of the internet. And whilst YouTube should be doing more to censor it, I don't know, the idea of regulating it's a really difficult thing, because you could argue that the email hosts should censor and remove any email that suggests that someone's a Nigerian prince. And then how are Nigerian royalty going to communicate with each other if their emails keep on getting deleted and they're not actually trying to scam anyone? You know, no, but you know, it's. I think there is a thing of personal responsibility, and companies are a lot better about this now. Like, you know, my bank all the time, funnily enough, sends me a message saying about how crypto you can get scammed easily in crypto. So companies are getting better at warning people about these things. But it's really, you know, there is a lot of it's down to personal responsibility and letting people know that, you know, making money isn't like really easy. And maybe you see these kind of TikTokers and stuff like that, where people think, oh, they're rich, they must, you know, they got rich so easily. But like getting rich usually comes with a long and hard work. You know, it's not just by sending money to something and getting 2x back and then repeating until you're a gazillionaire. And that's what people need to get, like, you know, to learn about, because otherwise we're just going to be in this, you know, endless loop of nothing. We're going to be spoon fed everything, right? And even when you're spoon fed everything, you're still going to have people that literally screw up, because they'll be eating everything that's on a plate, and they'll get scammed by whatever service it is, whether it's, you know, door to door, whether it's salespeople like doing scams, whether it's the email scams, phishing, and some of them are really intricate. There was a company I worked for, they faked being one of the legal representatives in order to try and get information on a merge, and this was a really sophisticated scam via phishing. But we had our wits about us. And I was the one that spotted it actually in the email filter, and I was like, "That's dodgy." And so yeah, like, you know, that's it. Sort of plan foiled. But then again, not everyone, you know, knows how to watch out for in their email. So it's a difficult thing. Personal responsibility, definitely, but at the same time, you know, everyone knows someone who's dumb enough to do it.
I think we're going to see tons more of the scams. I think it's exciting the way they used Metallica and the new album to power the scam. I think we can say every movie release from now on, every album release, every major video game release should have one of these scams. All you have to do is get a video of the person talking, put your little banner ad on there, put your QR code, and people just give you money. I also think one of Dan's big points right there is, if Metallica is so rich, they can just give the money away. People believe that, when we all know Metallica got rich by not giving the money away. That's the first rule of becoming rich. Like, you don't just give it away. You save every penny. And I think they forget that. And they're like, oh, they're just being so generous. They're just going to send me money because they don't care anymore.
And if it wasn't for them being so stingy and chasing people about Napster, they wouldn't have had one of my favorite like South Park quotes ever, which is, "That's Lars Ulrich, the drummer from Metallica. He wanted a gold-plated Shark Tank bar installed right next to the swimming pool, but because of people like you, he has to wait a few months now."
And they slayed them on Napster too. The animation I referred to is just so good. Napster bad, Metallica good. And he talks about how Metallica spent upwards of 24 to 48 hours writing this song. And Jason Newsted set himself on fire. And our drummer just got a gold-plated Ferrari. And, you know, they're like, we need this money. You can't be downloaded, but you are going to jail because you downloaded Into It Sleeps on Napster. You're going to get in trouble in jail. And it was a whole
I
thing.
remember that period where, do you remember there was some MTV Music Awards and they had Sean Parker, Napster, the two Napster guys, I can't remember the name of the guy, and they were doing the comparing for MTV Music Awards, and they both had Metallica t-shirts on because Metallica was suing them at the time. But yeah, the Metallica were on the wrong side of history back then, that's for sure.
And this has nothing to do with Metallica. It's not their fault these people got scammed. All they did
It's always their fault. Fuck that, it's their fault.
Ben blames Metallica. Moving on, issue 5. Early Bitcoin pioneer Ian Freeman goes to trial in New Hampshire. Ian and the other people behind Free Talk Live, some of the New Hampshire Free State people, were allegedly facing 8 counts relating to tax evasion and operating an unlicensed money transmitting business. They had several Bitcoin ATMs. They had no licenses. They had no business. They allegedly were just taking the money. Dan, Eve, we've covered this story before. Obviously, they're against kind of government and the whole idea of government and accountability. What do you think will happen in the Ian Freeman trial?
Well, at the very least, I think it's admirable that he's like standing by his ground. So like, I think the other ones made plea deals. Everyone else that's involved. It sounds like his ex-girlfriend, who's now married to someone else, actually turned against him, and she's going to be testifying against him. And whilst they made plea deals, he's saying, "Look, I've done nothing wrong," and that includes, I think, the fact that he hasn't paid tax since 2008. So he's like hardcore libertarian. He's like really saying, it's in the Constitution, technically, if you read it like this, that I don't have to pay tax. It does seem like he's probably going to end up, let's face it, he's going to probably end up with a bigger sentence than Sam Bankman-Fried. And the sheer scale of the operation, I think it was 10 million that he was associated with in terms of not tax evasion, but unlicensed money transmitting, just at the volume of 10 million. Whereas Sam Bankman-Fried, is involved in that, is a $10 billion plus, let alone if you think about the ripples of that and the other companies it brought down, that operation. But I think Ian, unfortunately, is going to get more time than Sam Bankman-Fried. He openly admits that he doesn't want to pay taxes, so that's they've got him on that straight away. They're not going to let that go lightly. They confiscated a bunch of Bitcoin. I think it was in the hundreds. So he's probably, I don't know if he get fined as well as as actually going in jail. But I think it's not looking good, I think, for his situation, unfortunately.
I think one of the other problems is that Bitcoin went up too much for Ian and them. They were holding on to 100 Bitcoin coins and so forth, which are astronomical, even to someone who got in relatively early like myself. Mike Dupree, you know a little bit about running Bitcoin ATMs. Wouldn't it be great if you could just run them without a license and keep some of the money and give some of the money to someone else and just, kind of do whatever you want, which allegedly seems to be what they were operating?
Yeah, I mean, I am partially libertarian, and I think a lot of us that watch this show agree that the taxation is getting a little bit out of control, especially in the United States. And I'm not a true believer in regulators having too much to do with our money, but it is kind of a necessary evil in some capacities. I just think it should be more limited than it currently is. That being said, it's, as I've advised, many other activists, both in the tax and regulatory stuff, as well as back when I used to be involved in the medical marijuana industry and that kind of stuff. Really, the way to make change is not going to be from a jail cell. So, I mean, if you really want to make change, bring people together and, work on changing the rules and changing the de facto way that things work, not just by blatantly violating it because you don't agree with it. So, I mean, if you don't agree with something, change the rules. Don't just blatantly ignore it and be so vocal about it, because once they take your funds and they throw you in a jail cell, then there's very little you're going to be able to do to ever actually progress any of these legislations and regulations and that kind of stuff. So I wish you the best of luck in everything. And, it's always sad to see people that are true believers and people who are out there actually building products and building services that actually did benefit the crypto community as a whole. It's sad to see them get locked up and to see them going through all this trouble and get their hard-earned money taken away from them. But it's again kind of hard to be, feel bad for somebody that was being so blatant in their disrespect for the laws, whether they agree with them or not. So I wish him the best of luck. And it's sad to see that everything went to nothing, but we'll see how it goes.
And let's also acknowledge that Ian Freeman did a lot of good work with Free Talk Live. He turned a lot of people onto Bitcoin. A lot of people got their first Bitcoins because of Ian. They heard about it on the show. They got incredible deals on Bitcoin, like $1, $30, like incredible deals on early Bitcoin. And they owe it to Free Talk Live and Ian Freeman. So respect to that. There's even there, though, he was very extreme in his libertarianism, and I believe that he exited Free Talk Live under bad circumstances with disagreements over how the age of consent, basically. Young girls should have the right to make their own choice at what age. And, if to a certain kind of person, everything is debatable. And I think he got in trouble for that debate as well. Ben Ark, what do you think about Ian Freeman, his chances at trial, and of course his contributions to Bitcoin?
Yeah, it's sad, man. I mean, like, disregarding whatever he said about age of consent, whatever, like when it comes to Bitcoin, he was providing good services, local Bitcoins trader. And from what I can tell, reading the article, from what his lawyer's saying, that, he did do some KYC with customers. And then if there was ever a customer who was trying to buy or deal with Bitcoin for illicit purposes, and he was made aware of it, then he didn't deal with them. There was an entrapment part of the case where I think some police guys, they tried to they said, we're heroin dealers and we want to sell $20,000 worth of Bitcoin or something. He said, well, I'm not going anywhere near you. This isn't what I do. And then they dropped into one of his ATMs or something. So he tried his best to not to operate in as moral a way as possible. But then at the same time, obviously, he's not paying his taxes. And, it's the old adage, death and taxes. Just fucking pay your taxes, man. It's not worth it. Like the priest says, challenge these things, but challenge them in such a way that you will continue to be free and be able to challenge them. Because, you're just they'll make a scapegoat out of you. That they want their tax dollar, they want their tax money. Hopefully they had, I think, out of the 25 charges, 18 of the charges have been dropped. And then he's got 7 charges left. And now it's going to court. Hopefully some of those other charges will be kicked out of court. I think so far he's facing a max of 70 years. So if he has some of those other charges kicked out, then hopefully maybe you'll just get, 5 years or something. Some sort of, a much smaller sentence, because he's all in all, from what I can tell, a decent guy, doing decent things, building decent services and trying to operate in a moral way. There's some good question marks. I think there was one of the main points against him was as a lady who got ripped off. I think it was 755,000, which went through his local Bitcoins. And the woman who was being ripped off, she was being scammed. There's some scam issues, and then their argument is, well, the bank allowed within a very short period of time, in less than a week, for 755,000 grand to go out of her bank account. Surely that should have flagged some problems, and maybe it shouldn't just be Ian Freeman who's up there in the docs. Maybe it should be the bank manager who allowed that 755,000 to leave this woman's account and go to local Bitcoins. So yeah, I wish them all the best. Hopefully, you know, I mean, he's inevitably going to face some jail time over the tax stuff, but hopefully it's much smaller than the 70 years, which he could get a max sentence for now. Good luck to the dude.
Well, as Hunter S. Thompson said, many fine books have been written in prison. And I'd also give that advice to the Dread Pirate Roberts. As Ben was saying, it sounds like Ian did try to run a clean market with his Bitcoin ATMs, as the Dread Pirate Roberts tried to run a clean drug market. He wouldn't allow certain things on there and all this. He ran a nice market, but at the end of the day, he ran a drug market. And as Ben and many others have said, Ian didn't pay his taxes, so he's going to lose by default. He's starting off in a bad position against the government here. Let's see. Where's our next article? We're almost out of time, but we've got one more article. Issue 6. Tim Draper predicts that Bitcoin will reach $250,000 a coin next year, despite the FTX collapse. He says the dam is about to break, and he predicts that women will join crypto, causing a rise and saving the day, no matter what about the FTX collapse. Of course, Tim Draper also predicted that Bitcoin would be $250,000 at the end of this year, which is right now. He also bought the Silk Road Bitcoins, which should have been saved to build new Smithsonian universities or museums in the United States. Mike Dupree, what do you think about Tim Draper's prediction? $250,000 of Bitcoin.
Sounds good to me. I'm gonna go get some more. I'll wait for it to drop a little bit lower first, though.
Ben Ark, what do you think about Tim Draper? A little positive news to end the show.
I think that's, you know, that's some point. Like, so that's where we're targeting for when it next goes up is sort of that $250,000 range. Sounds crazy from where we are, but it always sounds crazy from when you're in the bottom of the price. But yeah, like historically, if you look up whenever Bitcoin is pumped, and it's if you just take those pumps and you just superimpose those to where we are now, like it's possible. Like we could get $250,000 of Bitcoin. People are far more educated now than they ever have been. There's so much talent in Bitcoin. I've been to a bunch of conferences over the past year, even though the Bitcoin price has been dropping, and just the level of knowledge people have about Bitcoin now is so much more superior than it used to be. And just the amount of services and actually people accepting Bitcoin, websites accepting Bitcoin. There's more and more. I mean, in my little local village, I've got I think there's about 6 businesses which are really keen on accepting Bitcoin and using Bitcoin. So it's and you know the people who run those businesses are interested in Bitcoin despite the price. So yeah, I think this 8% fucking hodler bedrock motherfuckers. I think they can. It's a good place to start from, man. And I can see Tim Draper's dream coming true. He's right. He wasn't right for this year, but he'll be right for next year, I'm sure.
Dan, Eve, the sky's the limit, ending with optimism.
Yeah, I think so. End goal, right? I'm still short term a bit neggy Nancy or neggy Nelly, whichever. But it's just the end of the year historically. Bitcoin kind of doesn't do that good at the end of the year. You know, there's people like selling for taxes and stuff like that. And so I think that there's probably going to be another little drop again as part of the ripples from the whole SBF FTX thing. A bit of a mouthful that, but ultimately that's where we're heading, right? The scarcity of Bitcoin is its power, and there's still money being printed out of thin air. And it's going to continue. There's not really any letting up on that monetary policy or really admitting that it's actually bad for the economy. So I think history's just going to keep on repeating itself. I'd like to think that the cycles, the halvening is still going to play a big part of that. So whether that 250K prediction, it'd be great if it is next year. But it kind of would seem like it would be more likely placed at the end of 2024, after the next halvening rather than before it. But if it does go before the next halvening to 250K, and all that hype is surrounding it when the halvening happens, then it'll be an ultra mega ding dong pump when the halvening happens, because everyone will already be hyped up because Bitcoin's 250K. Then the halvening is going to happen and they'll be like, oh my god, it's 250K on steroids because there's halvening now. So yeah, I'd like it to be next year, but I don't think it'll be for a little while.
There's almost too much optimism in this room. But going back to Earth, Sam testifies on Tuesday. Exit question predicting against the Bitcoin predictor ball, the baldest source of truth in the Bitcoin industry. Mike Dupree, the price of Bitcoin this time next week, higher or lower?
Lower.
Dan Eve.
Despite the optimism, I think lower.
Ben Ark.
Higher, gonna get a pump. Higher.
Ben Ark says higher. Everyone else says lower. Let's ask the ball. Remember, shaking it could cause bubbles. Will the price of Bitcoin be higher this time next week? Yes. Yes. Unequivocal yes from the ball. The ball has spoken. But we're running out of time. Dan Eve, do you have a prediction or a story of the week? Go ahead.
My prediction is that okay, I'm gonna go. I think out of the blue, maybe I think when is the SBF thing? Sorry, when's he actually in court, right? When's he in Parliament or whatever it is? Well, Parliament.
Saying Tuesday,
the House,
but it's unclear.
Tuesday,
I guess you'd put him first, right? He'd be your first witness.
Okay, so there would be potential then after that. If that goes completely tits up, so my prediction is that he's actually going to get charges put against him, because I reckon he's going to stuff it up while he's in there. So I think as a consequence of that, he'll have charges against him, but I ultimately still think he'll end up wiggling his way out of it.
Incredible wishful thinking. Mike Dupree, prediction or a story of the week?
Yeah, I just think that there's going to be a lot more, not just with FTX, but just in general, a lot more hesitancy now of people getting in. And I think that we're already kind of in a bear market. So I just think it's going to go down a bit more for the next few months, maybe even below 10K, but we'll see.
Ben Ark, prediction or a story of the week?
I just got to say, I think Dupree's backdrop is just for the years, the winning backdrop. If he had an award for the winning backdrop, I'm so jealous of that sun and the sea. And
it's an excellent green screen.
Goodness me, it's a really good high quality green screen. Yeah. You got like a miniature in the background of Acapulco. So the story of the week. So Callie, who's one of the main LM Bits developers, he created the Cashew extension for LM Bits. And it's the easiest way that's ever existed to create a eCash mint. So that the mint itself, which you create, you send sats to it, and then it gives you an eCash, which you can then send and redeem for sats, or you can actually pay Lightning invoice. Very exciting. So it's Cashew. You can actually play around on the demo service if you go to legend.lmbits.com and you just enable the Cashew extension and then start playing around with it. It's really exciting. If you think David Chorley, he wrote his paper back in 1982, and now 40 years later, we've now finally got like the easiest way. It's like click, click, click. I have a Chorley and eCash mint. Fantastic. It's pegged to Bitcoin. It's an eCash which is redeemable from this LMBit service which you're using. So it's very exciting. Well done, Callie. To me, he's forever immortalized in the Cypherpunk Hall of Fame. But it's quite an achievement. So that's the story of the week. Was that? Cashew.
Excellent story of the week, Ben. It sounds great. And we're going to do our year-end spectacular in just a few weeks, December 22nd. And a spoiler on the inside track to be Bitcoiner of the year. Other, of course, than Mad Bitcoins, who's always Bitcoin of the year. Ben Ark with LN Bits, really knocking it out of the park there, traveling around, giving these seminars, teaching people how to build the little boxes. Like, people all over the world know Ben now, and we're just totally impressed with your work, Ben. You're doing great stuff at LN Bits. I just appreciate having you on the show and stuff.
Thank you. Maybe blush.
There we go. And we're out of time. We'll try to do better next time. But until then, bye.